Gets harder every day lugging this body about. I trust you've had a fruitful day. I do not say happy, though I hope it has been happy. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. So this evening we're moving on to number 29, the greater discourse on the simile of the heartwood. Now there's another one which is called the shorter discourse on the simile of the heartwood. And there are two differences, or two major ones. The first one seems to have been given by the Buddha on Vulture's Peak, which was in Rajgir, which is present-day Rajgir, Rajagaha, which simply means the town of the kings. That was where Bimbisara lived, just north of the Ganges. And the Buddha seems to be referring to Devadatta. Now, Devadatta was a cousin, and towards the end of his life, wanted to take over the order because the Buddha was getting old, etc. And the Buddha refused to accept his offer as the leader of the order. And so very angrily, he created a schism and took some monks off with him and started a new order. In the meantime, of course, after his rejection by the Buddha, seemingly tried to kill the Buddha by throwing a great boulder on him and setting a wild elephant on him. So it's not, anyway, he didn't succeed. And I think towards the end of his life, he was very remorseful, and he came back. He was on his way to apologize to the Buddha when it is said the earth opened up and swallowed him down to the Avicii hell, which is the worst of them all for creating a schism. That's a bit of magic there. The second one is given to a Brahmin called Pingalakocha. So the second one is much the same, but given to another one. And we'll come across a signal difference in a particular phrase. Okay, so this is what it says. Somebody going. So we talk about bhikkhus now. Talk about monks going forth out of faith from the home life into homelessness. Considering, I am a victim of birth, aging, and death, of sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I am a victim of suffering, a prey to suffering. Surely an ending to this whole mass of suffering can be known. Now, when he's gone forth, he acquires gain, honor, and renown. He is pleased with that gain, honor, and renown, and his intention is fulfilled. I have gained honor, renown, but these other monks, on account of which he lauds himself and disparages others. I have gained honor and renown, but these other monks are unknown and of no account. He becomes intoxicated with that gain, honor, and renown. Negligent, he lives in suffering. Now, the other discourse says, so he arouses no desire to act. He makes no effort for the realization of those other states that are higher and more sublime than gain, honor, and renown. He hangs back and slackens. And the simile is of a tree. A man needing heartwood, that's right in the middle of the tree, it seems, seeking heartwood, wandering in search of heartwood, came to a great tree standing possessed of heartwood. Passing over the heartwood, its sapling wood, its inner bark and its outer bark, he would cut off the twigs and leaves and take them away, thinking they were heartwood. Then a man with good sight seeing him might say, this good man did not know that heartwood, the sapwood, the inner bark, the outwood, or the twigs and leaves. Thus, while needing heartwood, seeking heartwood, wandering in search of heartwood, he came to a great tree standing possessed of heartwood, and passing over its heartwood, its sapwood, its inner bark, and its outer bark, he cut off the twigs and leaves and took them away, thinking they were heartwood. Whatever the good man had to make with Heartwood, his purpose will not be served. So too, such a bhikkhu, who only joins the order for gain, honor, and renown, is like one who takes twigs and leaves of the holy life and stops short with that. So those two passages are now repeated with the core changes. Okay, so here is somebody who's gone forth, and we can also mean meditators who go forth in order to be proud of being meditators who meditate in order to be proud of meditation. Go around saying, well, I practice vipassana meditation. Now, in the West, of course, that doesn't carry very far. But in the East, it might be a real plus to your job application if you say to somebody, well, I go to the monastery every week. I meditate in the morning and afternoon. So it counts for something in Buddhist countries. It presumes that you're more mindful, more wise, more in control of yourself, etc. But in the West, of course, it counts for virtually nothing. So none of us, I don't think any of us Westerners will be meditating for gain, honor, and renown. A monk, of course, might do it, a bhikkhu might do it, or the bhikkhuni, a nun, in order to be well known, so they get food. It's been a bit cynical. Okay, so now we have the same thing. So he does not become, so the next type of monastic is that he does not become intoxicated with gain, honor, and renown. He does not grow negligent and fall into negligence. Being diligent, he achieves the attainment of virtue. He is pleased with the attainment of virtue, and his intention is fulfilled. On account of it, he lauds himself and disparages others. I am virtuous, of good character, but these other monks are immoral, of evil character. He becomes intoxicated with that attainment of virtue, grows negligent, falls into negligence, and being negligent, lives in suffering. He arouses no desire to act. He makes no effort for the realization of those other states that are higher and more sublime than gain or than virtue, and he hangs back and slackens. So this is one who, living the holy life or living according to the precepts, thinks of themselves as being better than others. So that's a bit of a conceit there. And you might think, well, that's enough for this life. But in which case, you've lost out on the gain. Often in the order, you'll find monks and nuns who are very proud of keeping the Vinaya, the rule, very strictly. So this it can be a bit of a falling ground. And there's also this terrible dilemma, because you can't be fully liberated until you are purified, but you can't be purified until you're fully liberated. So that's a real sort of conundrum, and it's best not to even think about it. So now, so it's just like somebody who is seeking Heartwood and instead goes away with the outer bark, thinking the outer bark is the actual Heartwood. And in the same way, he would be disappointed when he tries to make what he wants to make out of that bark instead of Heartwood. So now, being pleased with the attainment of virtue, so this is the third type of monastic, but his intention is not fulfilled. He does not, on account of it, laud himself and disparage others. He does not become intoxicated with that attainment of virtue. He does not grow negligent and fall into negligence. Being diligent, he achieves the attainment of concentration. He's pleased with that attainment of concentration, and his intention is fulfilled. I am concentrated, my mind is unified, but these other monks are unconcentrated and their minds astray. He becomes intoxicated with that attainment of concentration, grows negligent, falls into negligence, and being negligent, he lives in suffering. So he arouses no desire to act. He makes no effort for the realization of those other states that are higher and more sublime than concentration. So here, concentration is referring mainly to the absorption states. So it's also for us meditators, ordinary meditators, where all we're trying to do is get concentrated in our practice. And of course, when you are concentrated, you can feel very, very beautiful. You can lift your heart to a certain level of joy or just peacefulness and pleasure, and think, well, this is enough for the time being. But in which case, we miss on the real goal. So it's like somebody who takes the inner bark. So there seems to be in trees, I don't know much about trees, but there's a bark and then there's an inner bark, and somebody who takes the inner bark thinking to himself that, oh, this is the heartwood. And so, of course, he would be disappointed. His purpose will not be served. And it's just like somebody who, will not be served. The next one is somebody who is pleased with concentration. So he's got his gain, honor, and renown. He's got his virtue. He's got his concentration, but he's not happy with that. He's now going for. He's not intoxicated with the attainment of concentration. He does not grow negligent, fall into negligence, and being diligent, he achieves knowledge and vision. Now, this is not referring to insight. It's referring to the higher powers, it seems, according to the commentaries. So things like divine eye, where you can see beyond what the physical eye can see, or you can hear what is beyond. All those magical things that we don't believe. But here, I have a little story for you. Some of you have heard this before, I'm sure. But once when I was teaching in the Isle of Man, I met a Jungian therapist. And he used to give talks in the evening, and we used to go along and listen. He's very good. And he told me, while we were speaking together, he told me that he'd been to Burma. He'd become very interested in the Dharma. He'd gone to Rangoon, to the main monasteries there, told them he wanted to learn about Buddhism, and they sent him up to Mandalay, where the university monasteries are. And he took with him, of course, a translator. He said when he was introduced to a very elderly monk who sat in this room that was just full of books, and he just sat on a chair in the midst of all these books, it seems. And they had a great conversation. I remember him saying to me it lasted about 2 hours, and it was only as he was leaving the monastery that he realized he hadn't been using the translator. And that look of sort of, disbelief was still on his face when he told me. So how can you explain that? So these are the higher powers. Anyway, this man also falls into negligence. He makes no desire to act, no effort for the realization of those other states that are higher and more sublime than these powers. You get lost intoxicated by these powers. And that's the person who takes away the sapwood. So that's the inner part. He's near the heartwood, but he's mistaken the sapwood for the heartwood. And whatever it was this good man had to make with heartwood, his purpose will not be served. So then we come to the final position. So somebody has attained all these things, but he's not pleased. He's not pleased with the achievement of knowledge and vision. And he does not on that account laud himself and disparage others. He does not become intoxicated with that knowledge and vision. He does not grow negligent and fall into negligence. Being diligent, he attains perpetual liberation. And it is impossible for that bhikkhu to fall away from perpetual deliverance. So here, finally, somebody has achieved the full purpose of our path, which is to become liberated from suffering. So it's as though a person went to a tree, cutting off only its heartwood. He took it away knowing it was heartwood. And whatever it was this good man had to make with heartwood, his purpose was well served. So, and then the final piece is, so this holy life, and he's not only now, remember, bhikkhus, anybody who's listening, anybody who's meditating, is not for gain, honor, renown, for its benefit. or the attainment of virtue for its benefit. Now, remember, virtue here also means all this stuff of purifying the heart, everything that we would normally think of as well as psychotherapy, but also, moral virtue, ethical virtues. It's not for the attainment of concentration purely, and these in the higher form are those absorptions, nor is it for the attain of these powers, but it is this unshakable deliverance of the heart that is the goal of the holy life, and its heartwood and its end. Okay, so when we sit to meditate, the purification is going on. We don't have to worry about it at all. Our effort is to bring the mind to a somewhat level of concentration, a steadiness of attention. And our purpose is, of course, to see the three characteristics of existence, which will bring about liberation from all suffering. And the end of the discourse, which was given to the Brahmin Pingala Kocha, of course, he's quite taken by this wonderful discourse by the Buddha. And as usual, we have this paean, magnificent Master Gautama, magnificent Master Gautama. Master Gautama has made the Dharma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, holding up a lamp in the dark to those who can see. I go to Master Gautama for refuge, to the Dharma and the Sangha of bhikkhus. From today, let Master Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. So he got another follower there with that talk. So a rather interesting little talk just to keep us on the straight and narrow. So I do hope that is inspiring and that you will continue giving all your best to the practice of liberation. May you be liberated from all suffering sooner rather than later. So we can sit for a while.